We've got 2 weeks left to cast our votes for Prop 50. If you haven't been involved in this campaign already, perhaps now is the best time to do it. We have the potential to lose our voice for the Second Amendment in Congress. We're already getting some data on early voting. Let's talk about it. Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel today. Perhaps some thoughts of concern or perhaps motivation as we do see some of the early numbers coming in from the early voting in Proposition 50. I wanted to touch on it today to make our final push going towards November 4th when the voting will be shut down. To do that, we have brought back the legislative director of CRPA. He's also the host of Firing Line Radio. You can catch him every Saturday at 1 p.m. on AM 590 The Answer. That, of course, is Rick Travis. Rick, thanks for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. And guys, I know that we've touched on Prop 50 a couple of times already. We discussed why a Second Amendment organization would be involved. I guess the short answer to that is because the Second Amendment would likely be involved. So with the change in Congress and the change in representation, the Second Amendment community certainly would suffer. We've kind of fleshed that out. So that's kind of our stake in this fight. And now we are seeing some of the numbers come back for early voting. But before we get into that, as always, guys, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe to the videos. It really helps get this information out there, and we need to get this out there. We need to get people out voting. If we get this message out as far as and wide as possible, you can help do that. So please like, share, and subscribe. So Jacob, let's just go ahead and start with these numbers. Can you go ahead and pull this up, guys? This is from MSN. It reads like this. California's Proposition 50 special election has seen a remarkable voter turnout with over 3.4 million mail ballots returned as of Wednesday. This turnout matches that of a presidential election despite the complex topic of redistricting. Proposition 50 aims to allow the mid-decade gerrymandering to counter efforts by President Trump to increase GOP representation in Congress, according to Los Angeles Times. That, of course, is according to the Los Angeles Times. That doesn't necessarily make it true. Democrats have a significant early voting advantage with 51% of returned ballots from registered Democrats compared to 28% from Republicans. This trend suggests a potential edge for Proposition 50, which requires a simple majority to pass. Proposition 50 proposes using a new congressional district map from Assembly Bill 604, which could enable Democrats to gain up to 5 additional seats in Congress, that is. The measure also calls for fair, independent, and nonpartisan redistricting commission nationwide, as reported by Ballotopedia. Governor Gavin Newsom and former President Barack Obama have endorsed the measure, emphasizing its national significance. Obama stated, there's a broader principle at stake that has to do with whether or not our democracy can be manipulated by those who are already in power. Despite the Democratic lead, Republican leaders expressed concern over the suppressed GOP early votes due to past criticism of mail balloting by President Trump, with millions of ballots still unreturned. Both sides continue to push for voter turnout ahead of the November 4th elections. So a lot of, kind of a lot of the same sentiment as we're seeing in a lot of these, campaigns or advertisements online. Yes on 50, no on 50. I think the important thing here, Rick, is first of all, early mail-in voting is up, right? Especially for a ballot measure on an off election year. I'm just sort of wondering, is that something that, would be indicative of the state or the country being politically charged, or is it specifically just on this issue of redistricting that might be politically charged? Why are we seeing such high voter turnout already?
Well, I think regardless of where you stand, the whole idea of gerrymandering has been since the 1800s an issue where people, regardless of their political stance, get very upset. They don't like the political manipulation of that, and so they tend to get more active.
So when you're looking at 3.4 million already, already being tallied, first of all, what was that? 51% plus 28% does not equal 100%. So when we're talking about these mail-in ballots, what is this disparity here? Are those independent voters, and how would they likely be counted?
Well, if you look at the actual numbers, and this is where numbers get distorted, we're talking that basically it's about 42% of California to 45, depending on which service you look at, are registered Democrats. It's about 38.5 to 38.9 are Republicans. The rest are independents. They come from various parties. So when the Democrats always like to claim, oh, if it's not labeled Republican, then it's obviously us. Well, that would be as ridiculous as the Republicans claiming all the independents are them because they're not. So there's a great surge. And we also forget there are Democrats that don't like this idea and there are Republicans that do. So um, I don't think on a proposition you can look quite down the political lines on this. There's a lot at stake. It's not just about five, congressional districts. It's about money. It's about manipulation. It's about a lot of different things that come into play. And when I say it's not just about congressional, you got to realize that if they were able to rewrite those districts and they are able to bring a lot more money and filter it down to lower elections, so a lot of voices would be squished out because a lot of parts of California, they don't, let's just be honest. If you're in Modoc County, the amount of money it takes to get elected to office is not the same as downtown San Francisco. It's just not. It's completely different. But when you're going to put Modoc County in the same area as the Bay Area by rewriting that entire area where Doug Lamalfa is currently the congressman up there in District 1, that's going to put money and resources and people across that board to influence elections. And it's also using a population that's not represented. So there's lots of issues that are going to come into play to this. You're going to have, people in rural communities that have very serious rural issues that people in urban communities need to realize. You don't grow your food in urban communities. Urban communities are incapable of growing the amount of food they need to sustain the population. That comes from your rural brothers and sisters. But people in urban aren't going to think, oh, we need to spend money on rural issues and basically hurt their own food supply with some of those decisions. So this is a very critical election. It's critical for the Second Amendment in particular. That's why we've got involved as an organization because, in areas where we've had sheriffs and people that have stood up for the Second Amendment, that's going to be much more difficult if all of a sudden all the Democratic money can pour in there from the congressional level down. That's going to make it harder to do. And believe me, there are people on the left that want to see that happen to try to further crush the Second Amendment in the state.
Yeah, I guess a couple of more generic, I guess, political questions for you here. I'm still thinking about how the voter turnout is a lot larger than you would normally see on a proposition like this. I guess first of all, does a larger turnout in early voting generally point to the direction of a higher turnout overall? Is that something that we've seen in the past decade or so in California? And also, I know you also said there's not really a way to define it with the political lines that we have when it comes to yes or no on Prop 50. Is there any way to assume safely which side would be favored with a larger voter turnout?
There's a lot of people that will pontificate and say, give you different answers. That I will tell you right now, there's a couple of issues we need to look at. We did not have mail-in ballots a decade ago. That is still relatively new. We're coming up on, I think it's about 6 years with them. So there's still a lot of we don't knows. We've not had a statewide sped up mandated, ballot measure referendum put on the ballot since mail-in balloting goes. To your point, there are a lot of people, especially I would say that lean right, that have a concern about ballot manipulation, and I wanted to address that if I could for a second. That mail-in ballots or going to the polls starting this Saturday up until the Monday before the vote is probably the securest way to make sure your ballots aren't manipulated. The Postal Service is taking great pains. Many counties got rid of bad actors, and it's much, much more difficult in these early stages to do that. Where it becomes less difficult to manipulate is election day. And that is where there's a lot of concern because historically Republicans wait till the last minute to go vote on election day. And there's three issues with that. Issue number one, that a lot of them listen to the press and, everybody's saying, hey, get out there and vote. And they're like, my vote doesn't count. They get something else they got to go do that day and they don't vote. So that's one issue. Second issue is a lot of people then, you know, listen to the news during the day as they're deciding to go vote, and maybe they don't take everybody in their family, they don't remind people. There's a lot of things that trigger issues. And then there's the manipulation of the vote because now you're going in, people are stretched in because it's election day, and there's more areas to manipulate the outcome of election on election day versus the other days. So that is why, several of the people on the no on Prop 50, as well as on the yes on Prop 50, have all said, get these votes in, get them in early, because that's the securest vote. So this has probably been the election, Kevin, truthfully, with the most push on those narratives. So that again, that's why I would say we just don't know. I mean, I'm not gonna, come up with something that sounds flashy on social media. I'm just gonna say we don't know, but we do know two things. The sooner you get them in, here's the strategy of both sides of this debate. Everyone's looking for where we think there could be votes. And if we see an area that has already casted their votes, I'll just take like, one county. You just go look at Orange County. Orange County's keeping pretty good track of where the votes are coming in from. Like, hey, this neighborhood has, historically had 35% say that voted, and we're at 22%. Okay, we know there's a few votes still left out there, possibly. But you go to another neighborhood and it's like normally they got 35% voting and only 3% have voted. Well, then you're going to hit that neighborhood harder with advertisements and everything to try to get those votes. So it allows campaign strategy to be directed towards areas where you think there's still votes left to be cast. And so that's why we've told people from day one, vote early, get that vote counted. Here's the other reason, if you vote on election day and there's any issue with a ballot, this gets really complex in the posting. We see it in elections all the time. We've talked about, you could take, we had an assembly member that her assembly seat was won by like less than 1,000 votes. And there were like probably like 1,500 votes that had to be cured. Well, we know that had we not cured those 1,500 votes, she wouldn't be seen in the assembly. That was going back out and correcting it. We had a few days to do that. In this case, I myself am a great example. I, mailed in my ballot and then I got a notice. Oop, we didn't like your signature. So I had a couple days to go redo the signature and get it checked and get it cleared and make sure it was all good. If I had done that on election day, not so much. That's not going to happen. And so then my vote doesn't count. So that's why I'm really pushing people to get out there and get this done early, because then if there's some reason that they want to deny it, you can get it corrected. You can get notified in time and get it corrected in time and make that vote count.
Well, let's, I guess, clarify those things as well. Currently in California, ballots or the polling stations are opened, correct?
Correct. There's ballot box areas right now where you can go drop off your ballot. You can mail your ballot. You can take it to the campaign headquarters and put in. You can take it to board of the voting office for your particular county and drop them there. Starting on Saturday the 25th, there will actually be places open all the way through election day that have normal business hours that you can go vote in person. And so that's another option. Or you can take your mail-in ballot and drop it off there at those locations. And then on election day, then it will be just like it is every other election day.
Right, which that day is November 4th. And then just clarify one more thing for me. You have this idea of going to the booth to cast your ballot on the 4th, which is election day. Is that also the last day that you can mail in a ballot, or do you have to mail in ballots prior to that?
That's the last day.
Okay, so November 4th, whether you're mailing in a ballot or you're going to do it in person, that is the last day that you can do either of those things. I guess just a couple other things to hit on with you here.
I would tell anybody, do not mail it in on the 4th. It's not going to really, I mean, by the time they count it, we're going to know this show. Let's get it in before.
I mean, at this point, from what you're saying, and you make a really good point, it's almost like let's get it in today, or let's get it in yesterday. If we can create an opportunity for our side of this campaign to better identify where they need to go and campaign more by providing them statistics on which cities or counties haven't cast enough ballots yet, let's absolutely help out our side and do that. So definitely, if you haven't done that already, do it today, but certainly the 4th will be your last day to do that. Let's get some final sentiments here, Rick. I know that we've talked about several different things. Simply put, for the firearms community, we're obviously talking no on 50. What is the most simplistic argument you have for somebody who might be changing somebody's mind today?
It's simply this, we already know that the far left extreme, who is in power disproportionately. I mean, if you look at that, like I said earlier, just under 40% are conservative, Republican leaning voters. Yet, right now, our Congress alone in this state is like close to 78% Democrat, which means we're already not represented equally and fairly. When you pull off these additional seats, it gets just about 90%. There is no way anybody should see that as fair. But then when it comes to firearms rights, we know that the left doesn't want to be confused with the facts. And so that makes it even harder. And then when you look at, if I'm a big congressional candidate and I'm coming with millions of dollars from around the country to take that space because they're trying to prove a point, I'm also filtering that money down to boards of supervisors, sheriff's races, school boards, etc. So you're looking at a complete reversal in those areas to turn everything blue in California. So this is a fight in my book for the Second Amendment because once we lose the second, we lose all the rights of the first.
I couldn't agree more. And then finally, what do you say to that person who says, I'm just one vote. I'm not going to change this election. My vote doesn't even count.
Every vote counts. I'm so sick and tired of hearing that. We've had several places in the state that people like that said, "Oh, you can't flip seats," and we've done it, and we've done it often with less than 1,000 votes. And as I tell people all the time, if you live in an urban area, think of 4 tracks at a cross street of homes. That means in 2 of those tracks, convincing one person in each of them to change their vote. That's what has gave several people in office in politics. Throughout the state, we have people that don't realize run unopposed that are against us all the time. It would be very easy to topple them. We just got to get good people to stand up because when good people don't, evil prevails. And so, and this is a point that I always make, there's evil on both sides. You've got to know what that is. And so, to people that are, center left, I'm like, run for office. Like, if you believe in the Constitution, the Second Amendment, you're my American ally.
Yeah, and as for the citizenry, I mean, we already voted. What was it, 2008? We voted for the independent commission to do the redistricting every decade. So, by saying no on Prop 50, what you're really saying is I stand by my vote to have the independent commission doing this redistricting in California. Rick, any other final thoughts as we make our final push to November 4th?
Please go vote.
Well said, short and direct, just the way that I like it. Well, I do appreciate your time, Rick. I know that you're a busy guy. Thanks for coming on and sharing with us today.
Always. My pleasure.
Absolutely. And guys, as always, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe. It's a great way for you to directly contribute to efforts just like these. And we also have got the litigation. We've also got the legislative efforts. We're trying to keep the Second Amendment movement in the right direction in California, and this is certainly a way that we can do it by striking down this proposition. Thanks again, guys. We'll see you on the next one.